No Santos Brasil 2023.
Welcome to Santos Brasil 2023. My name is Juliano. I am responsible for investor relations and strategic areas. We're going to be speaking about strategy, the performance of the company throughout 2023, and what we foresee for 2024. Here with me, we have Antonio Carlos Sepúlveda, the company's CEO. Ricardo Buteri, the CEO, Daniel Pedreira Doria, the CFO and IRO. We're going to begin and an announcement for those that are connected and are watching the presentation through streaming. For the question and answer session, please send the questions through ri@santosbrasil.com.br. We will be answering the questions once the presentation is finished. Thank you. Hey, good morning to all of you. It is a pleasure to be with you here today at Santos Brasil. I'm going to speak about the company strategy and the main opportunities that lie before us for coming years. And ensuing that, Ricardo and Daniel will offer you greater details, speak about the year that has just finished and what we expect for 2024. As you know, we have three business units: the container terminals, the logistics terminal, and the liquid bulk terminals. These three businesses are basically thriving. We have all of our units with capacity and with a very strong demand for the services that we render. And of course, this is a very positive outlook for the future. It's not only for the short term, but also for the long term. And this is what I would like to discuss with you. We have worked carefully on planning. We began this strategy in 2018, putting it in place through a very systematic execution. At the bottom, you can see our enablers. We have execution, not only planning, of course. I won't be speaking about the enablers, but I would like to refer to two of them: the employee experience. Santos Brasil is a company that renders services, and the team, of course, is essential, enabling us to comply with our goals, and we devote ourselves a great deal to this. Another enabler is the customer experience. We have been enhancing our relationship with the clients. We have ever more sophisticated interfaces, and we're improving our perception in terms of what is needed. Our strategy is to sell premium services, top-level services in the market, and we always deem that the client is able to perceive the offer that Santos Brasil offers. This is present in our product, and we have been able to execute our strategy based on this. I'm going to go through each business unit to go more in depth in terms of our assessment, in terms of CapEx, return per unit, and of course, the opportunities that we foresee in each of them. First of all, we have the container and vehicle terminals. We have a flagship, the Tecon Santos, that is the largest port in Brazil. It's very difficult to replicate. Tecon Santos, along with the vehicle terminal, by far are the port facilities that have the greatest throughput, and they have a privileged situation. We began our investment cycle in 2018, and in that year, we thought that we would have a better balance of supply and demand, and that we should enhance our prices. This is exactly what we did. We recovered the prices that we had
e
lost
temos
around
trabalhado muito para
2014,
prover capacidade
2015,
e
and we
conseguir
have been
gerar um
working
binário preço
arduously to
e alto
offer
volume, né?
capacity with
Então, essa
price
grande
and
escala,
high volumes
com
as
esse
our
nível de preço que a
equation.
gente está conseguindo
So with this price level
entregar,
that we have been
tem nos
able
dado
to deliver,
margens
we
superiores. A
have
nossa margem
had
EBITDA já vai ultrapassando
margins
os
that are quite
50%. A gente
high. Our
espera
EBITDA
que nos
margin goes
próximos anos a gente
beyond
chegue aí a
50%,
55,
and we
57% de
hope
margem
in the
EBITDA.
coming years
Falo
to
isso, margem
reach
EBITDA global da
55,
companhia, incluindo
57% of EBITDA
despesas
margin
corporativas, incluindo a
globally for the
logística, que é
company,
uma
including
atividade que
corporate
tem
expenses and
margens
logistics,
EBITDAs
which
menores do que
is
os
an
terminais de contêiner,
activity that
principalmente pela
has
capital
lower
intestino.
EBITDA margins
Então,
compared to
focando aqui
containers
nos
because
gráficos,
they are
nós
capital
temos
intensive.
2023, terminaremos esse ano com
In
2,4 milhão de TEUs.
2023, we will finish with
A utilização dessa
2.4
capacidade já está
million
por volta dos 2 milhões de
TEUs.
TEUs. Foi
The
um ano
use
muito
of that
atípico,
capacity is around
absolutamente
2,000
volátil. Primeiro
TEUs.
trimestre
It
muito
has
fraco,
been a
terceiro
very
trimestre com
difficult
meses
year, a
muito
very
fortes, e
weak
isso para
first
terminal de contêiner
semester.
não é bom.
The third quarter
Mas o
with
Teconsanto
good demand.
conseguiu tirar
It's
isso
not
de
good
letra,
for a
conseguiu absorver
container
todos os
terminal,
picos
but
do porto, nós
Tecon was
conseguimos
able
absorver
to
todas as filas que o
absorb
porto
all of
tinha,
these ups and downs,
principalmente porque a gente
deal
conseguiu
with all
construir
of
essa
the
capacidade, começou a
lineup
construir essa
that we had at
capacidade em
the port, and we
2018 e a
began
gente
to
vai
build this
continuar a fazer isso
capacity in
até o ano de
2018. And
2031,
we
quando
will
a gente espera
continue to
chegar
do this
com
until
3 milhões de TEUs de
2031,
capacidade.
when we will
Não
reach 3
percebemos
million
no curto
TEUs
prazo,
of
médio prazo,
capacity.
nenhuma
In the
disrupção com a
short and
oferta do Porto de
medium
Santos.
term, we don't
A
foresee a
estratégia da
disruption in
autoridade
the
portuária
capacity of the Port of
atual, da gestão
Santos.
que aí está,
The Port
me parece acertada em
Authority
incentivar
has a
o
good
investimento
management at
nas
present.
unidades
It is
existentes do porto, principalmente
incentivizing
porque com
investment
isso você
in the units
consegue
that exist in the
capacidade de
port.
curto
And
prazo,
with
né?
this, we
A
are
construção
able
de um
to
novo
attain
terminal, você só vai ter
short-term
capacidade daqui a
capacity.
5, 6
For the
anos,
construction of a
e a
new
preocupação
terminal,
é
the
que realmente o Porto de
capacity
Santos
would only
continue
come
a prover
about in
capacidade.
5 or 6 years. And the
Esse ano foi
idea is
um ano
for Port of
atípico,
Santos to continue to
nunca vi em
provide
Santos o PIB
capacity.
crescer perto
This
de
has
3%
been in
e o
a
volume de
typical year. I
contêiner
have
cair
never
perto de
seen the
2%, né?
GDP grow 3%
Então, acho
with
que
drops in
o ano que
other
vem será
areas.
diferente. Acho que o ano que vem deve
The
ser um ano
year
de crescimento. Difícil essa
2024
altura precisar o
could be a
quanto,
year of
mas já
growth. It
tivemos um
should be
terceiro trimestre
different,
melhor,
but we have already had better
diria assim, um
third
segundo semestre
quarters
muito melhor que o primeiro
and
semestre.
second halves
Mas
of the
vamos
year, much
encerrar o
better
ano
than
tanto
the
o Porto
first
de
half
Santos
of the
quanto a
year.
Santos Brasil
But we will
com
be
volumes
ending the
menores
year
do que os
at
volumes
Port of
movimentados em
Santos
2022.
with volumes
Mas
lower than
o
those
Teconsantos mostrou muita
moved
resiliência
in
e mesmo assim
2022.
melhoramos
For
EBITDA,
the
melhoramos
Port of
margem
Santos
em
shows
cenário
great
adverso e a
resiliency.
nossa
We have
expectativa
improved
é de um
EBITDA
crescimento
margin
assim
in an
vigoroso
adverse
para os
scenario,
próximos
and our
anos.
expectation
Acho
is
que
for vigorous growth in the coming
nosso
years.
plano de investimento está bem
Our
fundamentado, bem
investment
montado, está
plan
sendo
has
bem
a very good
executado
base. It
e o
is being
objetivo aqui é ter
executed
capacidade sempre
very
sobra de 200 a
correctly,
300
and
mil
we
TEUs
always
por ano,
have an
capacidade
additional
essa,
capacity
para
of
que a Santos
200,
Brasil não
300
perca só
additional
contêiner disponível no Porto de
TEU
Santos.
so that
Essa é a
Brazil Santos
estratégia
does not miss
da
out
Santos
on
Brasil
a
com o
single
Teconsantos.
container
Isso
at
aconteceu em
Santos Brazil.
2023
This
e a
is
gente
our
quer que
strategy.
isso
This is
aconteça nos
what
próximos
happened
anos.
in
Aí
2023, and we
a
want to
gente vem
continue
acompanhando
this
também o
going
desenvolvimento dos
forward.
outros terminais.
We have been
Tem
following up
terminal
on the
renovando o contrato, tem
development of
terminal
other
acompanhando o
terminals.
investimento,
There are
mas eles
terminals
estão mais
renewing
atrasados do
contracts,
que a Santos Brasil nos
terminals
seus
with
projetos.
investment plans,
E a
but they're
nossa
lagging
expectativa para
behind
os próximos anos é que a
vis-à-vis
gente capture
Santos
quase
Brazil. And our
100% do crescimento
expectation
do
is
Porto
to
de Santos.
capture 100% of the
Então,
growth
os
of the
senhores
Port of
deverão ver,
Santos.
deverão assistir
So
a Santos Brasil
doubtlessly, you will
gradativamente
witness the
aumentando o
fact
seu
that
market share
Santos
no
Brasil
Porto
will
de Santos.
gradually enhance its market
A
share at
nossa
the Port of
previsão de
Santos.
investimento para
Our
2024
forecast for
para
investments for
todos os terminais é de 500
2024
a
for
600
all
milhões
of
de
the
reais.
terminals
Nós
is of
aí
500 to
estamos
600
antecipando
million
investimentos que estavam
reais.
programados para
We're
serem realizados em
anticipating
2025 e
investments that
2026,
had been
justamente
scheduled
por causa
for
desta visão, né?
2025,
Essa capacidade, esse
2026
investimento que vai
based
ser
on
em
this vision.
2024, ele vai
Those
prover
investments for
capacidade para o final
2024
de
will
2025 e o
provide
ano de
capacity
2026
for
e
the
início de
end of
2027. A capacidade
2025,
que nós usamos hoje
2026,
em
and the beginning
2023 é
of
fruto dos investimentos de 21 e
2027.
22. Por isso
Now, what
existe
we're
essa
using
alteração
today in terms of
na
capacity is
nossa
thanks to the
expectativa de
investments
investimento.
of
Temos
21
a
and
oportunidade também
22.
em
We
Vila do Conde,
also
né?
have
Ricardo
opportunities in
depois vai
Vila do
passar para
Conde.
vocês com mais detalhe a
Ricardo
expectativa que
will
temos por perto de Vila
convey
do
in
Conde,
greater detail
principalmente
the
alguns problemas
communication. We have for Vila do Conde, precisely because of the problems we have in the Amazon River. So we have also anticipated investments for 2024. In Bituba and the vehicle terminal continue with their normal capacity. In Imbituba, well, the characteristic is having a great deal of volatility, and we include automobiles there. There has been a change of Argentina for the western part of South America, and our expectation is that at some point in time, Argentina will return to the vehicle export market, and this will increase our total capacity. This does not mean that we're not doing well. We're going to have lower results compared to 2022, and in 2024, the expectation is for the vehicle terminal be very similar to results in 2023 without great surprises. The great change, of course, would be the resumption of Argentina in this market. Very good expectation. Ricardo will convey greater details to you. We have new cabotage lines at the Port of Santos. We have a port for deepening the Port of Santos. This will enable us to have greater transshipment, and this always comes with gateway for imports and exports. So we're being very hasty in this project if there is that possibility of having greater transshipment to make sure that the Port of Santos is ready for this. So we're running to offer more capacity because these containers are coming in. I'm going to go on to logistics. Logistics has, of course, suffered from imports. There has been a drop in imports. We have shown great resiliency. We have lost a bit of market share, but significantly increased our volumes. And the strategy here is to invest in technology, to set our services aside, to sell at premium prices based on that strategy that I conveyed a short while ago, to set ourselves aside and to show products where the client will perceive value in products that cannot be replicated. And those who work with the container terminal, they help us with Tecon in peak moments. And we have to make the most of this synergy with Tecon Santos. And here we have the specialization of the company of focusing on SL containers that take containers to several shippers. We have a more sophisticated cargo to operate with. And this is a market where we have been growing steadily. And this market has helped us to increase the average price of containers at the two terminals. We have also invested in 3PL. This is a business with lower margins compared to the Port of Santos. The business is much more sophisticated. So far, we have not increased the speed of growth because we're still enhancing our technological platform to penetrate this market with strength, working with cross-selling with Tecon Santos. This is a gigantic market where our market share is minimal, and we are developing plans and projects to grow there and finding sites where we will have greater margin and greater synergy with Tecon Santos. Logistics has grown considerably, and we still have space to double the EBITDA in this business. I draw your attention. We have the outlook of investing 30 million per year for the coming 3 years. This because of an area that we have that is attached to our port. We're licensing this area. We have eliminated vegetation, and we're going to work with a new yard to be able to service the SL containers. We delayed the beginning of execution this year because there was a drop of imports at the port of Santos. This is what is left over from COVID. There's a very high interest rate globally, and all of this has impacted the imports at the port of Santos. Our expectation is that consumption, that imports will be resumed in Brazil. The interest rate, of course, is steadily dropping. Imports will return, and we do want to be ready to increase our market share and also to do this at Port of Santos and to bring along with us logistics to have a higher profile in our company portfolio. Now, the third and last business unit refers to the liquid bulk terminals. We anticipated the operation of these terminals by 1 year and a half. We acquired the assets from the former owners of these terminals. You can see the construction of new tanks. Presently, we have 50,000 cubic meters available with a very high occupation. The port of Itaqui has high demand for fuel. It services agribusiness, and it's aligned with what we had foreseen when we acquired this asset. The coming year, in mid-year, we will receive an additional 60,000 cubic meters, enabling us to reach 110 cubic meters and making it easier to sell. We already have a positive EBITDA. We will end the year 2023 with positive EBITDA, and the expectation is a gradual growth of EBITDA until 2025, when we reach full capacity of this project at 190,000 cubic meters. Now, what is going to attain that EBITDA in 2025, 2026 is the potential of this facility. This side, and this is a business that could reach 150 million in terms of EBITDA once it is fully operational, considering the demand at the Itaqui port.
Investments are like clockwork. In 2023, 220, 270, 240, something like that. In 2024, more close to 270 million. And then we end the investment cycle. So we are going to have state-of-the-art, fully automated, very low cost, and we are expecting EBITDA margins in this project in excess of 70%. So this industry is low labor intensity, and this terminal has the highest level possible of automation. We are very, very excited. This is a fragmented business in Brazil. And here, our strategy is that this terminal can still grow. We could add another 40,000 cubic meters. We want to leave this for the future. And we will be looking into other opportunities for liquid bulks. And we have a very clear objective. Our expectation of return is true and real. So it's 15 to 20%. We're super selective with our assets. It needs to be, can be replicated, and the cost of acquisition and construction costs needs to assure returns in excess of 15%. Now, dear friends, ending my presentation, we are going to start 2024 with good prices for all assets that Santos Brasil operates in. All investment budgets, they're right on schedule, and we expect we'll be able to balance out CapEx and OpEx so that we have a flow of dividends that is very vigorous, so that shareholders can have a return for everything you've invested on Santos Brasil. So thank you so much. I'm going to give the floor to Ricardo Buteri, who's going to give you more details. Oh, I'm sorry. there's another slide that I forgot to talk about. So this is ESG, another very important aspect of our businesses for Santos Brazil, one of the enablers of our strategy. So here, as you can see, I would like to highlight the decarbonization of our operations. Our customers, the ship owners, they're very aggressive in decarbonizing. Society is demanding this from industry, and Santos Brasil cannot escape its responsibility to that. Our goal is to be net zero by 2040. We have already been able to significantly reduce until 2023. We went from 14 CO2 kilos to 9 kilos of CO2 by TU in the last 5 years. And we are carbon neutral for scope 2 for energy consumption. And the project I mentioned to you of the terminal that we wanted to expand the quay in Guarujá, they are carbon neutral for customers in the state of São Paulo. And Tecom Santos is going hand in hand with the shipbuilders, with our customers, to reduce and give them advantage in the reduction of their carbon footprint. So I think you've been following up. There are now ships that run on ethanol to reduce carbon emissions. All pieces of equipment that we are buying, investment that you mentioned, they're all electrical. We have received 8 pieces of equipment that are fully electrical that we use to handle goods in Tecom Santos harbor. So for 2024, we'll be receiving another 8 electrical machines, and we gradually reduce our carbon footprint. And I think that by 2030, we will be able to reduce more or less half of what we have today. After 2030, it will be more difficult. We'll need to compensate part of it, but we are completing our project for 2040 so that by then we are carbon neutral. Other parts that are not less important in our ESG, Brazil has huge social problems. So we delivered 41 projects of social work in the communities that are around our terminals. We have approved 58 social projects for next year. We have a diversity and inclusion committee. We have 35% women in leadership, or rather 28% women in the leadership, and we want to get to 35% in 2030. Today we have 25% Black people in the leadership of the company, and want to get to 30% Black people in the company's leadership by 2030. And all the work that we are doing in terms of diversity at Santos Brasil, making it a stronger company. And governance goes in a very striking way so that we can meet those goals. So we have a compliance committee, we have a whistleblowing channel. So the company wants to provide psychological confidence and security so that people can work in a discrimination-free environment. In terms of ESG, we have ISC, we are in B3 ISC, we are in the new market, Novo Mercado of Brazil. Our board has 8 members, the chairman and vice chairman are women, so we have a chairwoman. And this is a modern company ready to generate wealth, to provide you the return that you need for your investment. So now I'm going to give it over to Ricardo to give details about our growth strategy.
Muito bom dia a todos. Muito obrigado
Good
pelo
morning,
tempo, pela
everyone.
vinda e
Thank you
pela
so much for
oportunidade
being here,
de
for
ter
the
evento e
opportunity
nós possamos
of
falar
having an event in
diferentemente
which
de uma
we can,
teleconferência de mercados com tempo
which is
extremamente
different from a
contado,
usually conference call
highlights
where
de
time
destaques de
is
23
very short. The
e
highlights for 2023
sinais que certamente me
uh,
apoiarão
will
para
be
as
the
simulações
topic
que os
of my
senhores normalmente fazem
presentation and
acompanhando o case da
indications
Santos
for the
Brasil.
simulations
Eu
that you
sempre
have
costumo brincar que é
if you
muito bom
follow the
falar
Santos
depois do 01,
Brazil case.
porque a visão
It's very
holística e
good
estratégia que
to
ele passa
speak
faz
after
com que eu
01
tenha
because
a
the holistic and
possibilidade de
strategic
colocar
vision
uma
that he
lupa
shares
com
with you make
profundidade
it possible
em
for me to
passar o
put a
máximo da
magnifying
experiência do que nós
lens
estamos vivendo.
to show
E
you as much as
principalmente
we
algumas
can
tendências.
of what we're
Tendências
going
essas que
through,
a gente tem que
especially
guardar o
trends.
devido respeito e o critério com
And
a
we need to
CVM
be
sobre
very
predições, mas que
respectful
são
in terms
sinais daquilo que a
of
gente
trends
acredita e
because of the
aposta
CVM, but
minimamente
these are
como
trends that we
possibilidade de
minimally bet
perpetuar em
on
2024.
as possibilities that they will
Vamos falar um
continue in
pouco de Porto de Santos.
2024. So
Então, para
let's
cada
talk a little
slide, eu vou
bit about
sempre
the
dar um
Port of
sinal muito
Santos.
claro,
So I'm going to give you a very
em alguns
clear
mais enfáticos do que os
sign.
outros, para
Sometimes
dizer
I'll be
o que
more
vem ocorrendo.
emphatic than others
Então,
to tell you
dentro da
what's going on.
fala de Antônio Carlos, sim, de
As
fato nós
Antonio
temos aqui
Carlos
Porto de
spoke,
Santos com um panorama
and the
muito
Port of Santos
desafiador, reflexo
has a
do cenário
very
econômico de
challenging
23. Os senhores acompanharam o
scenario for
case muito de perto.
2023.
Mas
We've been
veja bem,
following
o que eu
us
quero
up very
destacar nesse
closely.
panorama
What I would like
é
to
o nível da
highlight in this
resiliência do Porto de
overview
Santos.
is the
O
resilience
Porto de
of the Port
Santos,
of Santos.
tendo um
The
primeiro
Port of
trimestre como
Santos in the
teve,
first quarter
completamente inesperado,
had a
consegue ainda assim
completely
fazer uma
unexpected
recuperação
first quarter.
onde nós vamos
It could
fechar um
still
ano
recover, and we are going to close the
marginalmente
year
em menos 2%.
at minus
Só para
2%
relembrar, no
marginally.
primeiro
Just as a
trimestre, essa
reminder, in
conta era menos
Q1,
13.
it was minus
Então,
13.
essa resiliência do Porto de
And
Santos
so
é
this
para dizer
resilience of the
que,
Port of
quando a gente
Santos,
olha em valores
we want to
absolutos de
show
container, nós
this,
estamos
that
falando em
when
100
we
mil
look in
containers ano.
absolute numbers in
É
terms of
ínfimo, é
containers,
marginal. Mas tem alguns
100,000
recados ao longo
containers
dessa
every year, this is a
apresentação
very
que eu
marginal,
vou
very
conseguir
small number.
enfatizar o
But there are a
porquê
few
que
other
o
details that
panorama
will make it
competitivo e a
possible for
resiliência do
me
Porto
to
de Santos,
emphasize why
aliado a uma
the
estratégia, uma
competition
disciplina de execução,
scenario
faz com que
demonstrate
tenhamos
that we
crescimento do
have
EBITDA, que Daniel vai expor
execution
aqui no detalhe.
discipline,
Faz
made
com
it
que
possible for
tenhamos
us
a
to have a good
ratificação
EBITDA
de uma
and
estratégia
also
comercial de
to
precificação que foi muito
prove
importante para
our
23,
commercial
dado
strategy
que a
that was
retração é no
very
resultado.
important for 2023
Então,
since there is a
aqui está o
slowdown
acumulado dos 9
or a
meses, 22 versus
shrinkage.
23, então perceba
So
que
here we have the
realmente
first 9 months of
a
22 and
diferença é bem
23.
marginal.
You see that
E
there is a
aqui eu vou
difference,
passar para o
though it's
gráfico do
marginal.
EBITDA, para
And now
falarmos
going to
pouquinho
the
sobre
EBITDA
fluxo
chart
de carga.
to talk a little bit about cargo
Vale
mix.
ressaltar o seguinte:
It's important to
o que de
emphasize
fato aconteceu
that
com o
what
Porto de
effectively
Santos, quando a gente
happened
olha o
in the
mix de
Port of
carga,
Santos
a
when we look
despeito
at
de
the
alguns
cargo mix.
crescimentos, retrações
Despite
marginais, é
the
que a
marginal
cabotagem cresceu.
growth, is that
A cabotagem cresceu
cabotage has grown.
10%.
Cabotage has
A
grown
cabotagem
10%.
continuará crescendo.
Cabotage
Eu
will
tenho
continue
um
to
orgulho e
grow,
uma
and
satisfação
I am
enorme
proud to say,
de
I'm very
falar
happy
aqui em
to say,
público que sobre a
out in
cabotagem
public,
nós acabamos de ser nomeados após uma
that we
negociação
have
recente
just been
de uma
appointed
nova
after
joint venture,
recent negotiations
produto da
for a new
BR do
joint
mar, o
venture,
primeiro
a
efetivamente,
product BR of the
pragmaticamente
sea.
falando, que existe, que é
So,
uma joint venture entre Hapag
a
Lloyd e a
joint
nossos. Eles
joint
criaram
venture
uma nova
between
empresa
Hapag,
chamada
Lloyd, and Sul.
Norcoast. A
They've created a
Norcoast,
new company called
após toda a
Norcoast.
análise dos terminais
Norcoast,
pela
after
costa
all
brasileira, definiu que
analysis
o
of
T
terminals on the
Santos
Brazilian
será o
coast,
seu
they
terminal para
defined
poder
that
fazer
Santos
todo
will be the terminal
esse in-out de container. Então, o primeiro
for
fato,
them for in and out of
cabotagem
containers. Number
crescendo
one,
em 23,
cabotage has
novo
grown
serviço
in
já anunciado, nós fomos no
2023.
lançamento da
New
Norcoast
services
semana
have
passada
been
aqui em São
announced.
Paulo.
We had the launch of
Santos
Norcoast
Brasil,
just
Tecon
last week in
Santos,
São Paulo.
já
Santos
está
Brasil and Tecon
nomeado
Santos
como
has
terminal
already
para
been
receber essa
appointed as the
nova
terminal to
volumetria.
receive this
Volumetria que
new
não
volume.
vem só para a
This
cabotagem.
volume doesn't come
A
just for
partir do momento que existe
cabotage.
um armador
Once there is
de
a
longo
ship
curso, como o
owner
Hapag Lloyd,
as
toda essa
strong as Rapid
devoção e
Lloyd,
essa movimentação do que vem de
everything,
fora
all the
vai
turnover
fazer
and
com
all
que
the
haja mais movimento, seja
everything
de
that
vazio,
comes
seja
from
de transbordo
outside,
e seja de posicionamento
all the
de
movements in terms
contêineres
of
para poder fazer
transshipment
toda essa
and
costa do
containers
Brasil.
to
Então,
travel the
fica
coast
a
of
primeira
Brazil.
mensagem sobre a
So this is
cabotagem,
number one message about
sinal
cabotage,
de que
and
neste
this is an
sentido,
indication that
24, o crescimento que nós estamos
in
vendo,
2024,
a probabilidade realmente é de se perpetuar.
we are expecting the continuation of the growth. Now, talking a little bit about take-on. So it's the port, but we are going to get into our assets. So Antônio Carlos used a very interesting word. He said, we are prepared. We are ready. We have the capacity to continue to grow. So, you know, our company's strategic investment plan, we have been following up the execution since 2019, 200,000 new TEUs in capacity. Where does it go in the strategy? How can we not have to depend on price adjustments? Well, there are a few indicators. Look at the legend on the left-hand side about long haul versus berth window. So how can we read this to help you understand? Number one, the two competitors that we have in the Port of Santos receive in year-to-date numbers or overall more than 50% of all ships outside the berth windows. And so there is a map of windows. You write a contract and you define which day of the week and time that ship needs to moor, like airplanes. So when we have a vision that the competition has 53% of long haul getting late, no matter how much we normalize supply chain, this has a direct impact on the day, week, month. So who does it impact? It impacts the owner of the terminal adversely because there is inefficiencies that are generated in the chain. It has an impact of Tecon Santos as part of its strategy of adding capacity and having a service level where we can contribute and not allow lines to be formed in the Port of Santos, and so that the rest of the trip along their routes go on well. So 42% of what we receive in Santos Brasil is fully on time. But part of that on time may get late, and because of the hourly handling that we have, of 13 containers positioned, we take this difference out from late coming ships. So it's more than an obligation of a port handler or port operator that wants to have excellence and is already recognized as such in the market. Now, let's see the upside. So far I've been saying we're doing our job. The number of extra calls in 2021 by Tecon Santos for the Port of Santos in terms of containers that were not part of the services that we have contracted for Tecon Santos was 80,000 boxes, 2021, post-COVID. So this is a rebound effect, 80,000 boxes, Tecon Santos. Two factors: extra call due to demand post-pandemic and inefficiencies. So what's going on in 2023? And in our opinion, it's completely impossible to change in 2024. 80,000 boxes in 2021, 45,000 extra call boxes in 2022, and we are going to end 2023 with 72 boxes. Is it another post-COVID? No, of course not. What's going on is that the demand of the port, as you've seen, has shrunk. So the demand, instead of being organic extra call due to demand, is mainly extra call due to inefficiencies, because of this leap from 44 to 72,000 this year. So these are indications that we are showing here of operational efficiency, installed capacity, and service level. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a given.
essa estratégia está ongoing.
This strategy
Não
is
tem
going on.
planejamento futuro. Não, não,
There
isso
is
está
no
acontecendo
future
hoje.
planning. This is
Eu queria
happening
vir para o lado
today.
direito para falar algumas
And now I
coisas.
would like to go to the right-hand side of the slides to say a
Despeito
few
de uma
things.
leve retração do Porto de
Despite a
Santos,
slight
do CON,
shrinkage
obviamente,
in
perceba
the
que
port
o
of
número
Santos
de
at the Con,
escalas no Porto de
obviously,
Santos
see that the
aumentou.
number of
9 meses de
stops in
22,
the port of Santos has
1.657
increased.
escalas.
So
9 meses de 23, 1.792. Perceba que a quantidade de dias de espera,
72,
como eu
sorry.
falei,
So
regularizou.
last year, in the first 9 months
Não
of
tem
last
mais
year, it was
gargalo, não tem mais estresse
about
logístico.
1,600, and this
Só
year
que,
about 1,700,
dado
with no stress.
esse outro slide, esse outro gráfico aqui,
On this
dado
other chart here,
o tempo de
considering
espera e a utilização da
waiting
capacidade
time
de
to
berço,
more
existem várias capacidades.
and key capacity,
Berço, retroárea,
so
conjunto,
birth,
dinâmica, estática. Aqui eu estou falando de utilização de berço.
interland,
Então
statics, this
perceba
is
que
birth.
se nós temos mais navios,
So if we
uma
have more
customização
ships,
pouco menor, mas mais navios transitando.
with
Se
more
nós temos esse
ships
cenário
going
de
around, we have the
navios chegando
scenario
em atraso no longo curso,
of
que não é responsabilidade dos terminais
late
concorrentes,
ships,
tudo
which
nessa
is not the
vida, mas o fato
responsibility
é que
of the
acontece.
competitor terminals. The fact is that this
Nós
happens.
estamos com nível de sofisticação e preparo
So we
hoje,
have
que a área de
today a
inteligência do
sophistication and
mercado,
preparation
regularmente na área
level.
comercial, 72
We have
horas antes
72
do navio
hours
dar o
before
anúncio de
the
chegada
ship
no Porto de Santos,
announces that they will
não interessa
arrive
para
at
qual
the port
terminal.
of Santos, doesn't
Nós
matter
temos
which
todos os
terminal.
3 lineups
We
em
have all the
paralelo, um ao
3
outro.
lineups in parallel.
Nós sabemos qual é a
We know
capacidade do terminal,
which is the
quantos
terminal
movimentos por hora
capacity,
está fazendo,
how
e
many
se o navio
movements we're
vai
doing
chegar,
per
vai
hour,
esperar
and if the
quantas
ship
horas.
will wait and how many
O
hours
nível de
they will need
sofisticação
to
de mercado e
wait.
inteligência
The
de mercado
level of
faz com que nós
sophistication and market
antecipemos 72
intelligence
horas antes
make
desse
us
navio
be
chegar no Porto de
72
Santos.
hours before
Os clientes,
the
eles
ship
mesmos
arrives to the
olharão
port
o
of
navio e
Santos. The
falar,
customers are
senhores,
the same. We can
tem
go to the
2
ship
navios à
owner
sua
and
frente,
say, well, gentlemen, there are
por
2 ships
exemplo,
ahead
no
of you,
terminal do concorrente 1.
for example, in the terminal of
O senhor
competitor
está
1.
disposto,
Are you willing,
com o nível de volumetria que
with
você
the volume that
movimentar em
you
20
have,
dias, em
that
aguardar
you're
5
handling
dias,
2023, do you want to wait
onde
for
existe
5
uma média de
days?
dia,
When there's an average of 1
dia no
day,
peak season, em
1
setembro,
day in
se você
September?
pega primeiro semestre,
So if you take
8
the
horas,
first
9 horas,
half of the
não tem
year,
dúvida,
8, 9
se
hours, a direct
inicial,
question.
o senhor realmente vai esperar ou o
Do
senhor
you
para quando chegar?
really want to wait, or
O
would you
serviço
like
não é
to
nosso,
moor upon
mas foi
arrival?
comprado.
The
O
service
box rate,
is
o
ours,
SLA,
but
estão
the
negociados
contract,
com o
the
mesmo
box
cliente em outros
rate, have
serviços.
been negotiated
O que
with
que
a client
acontece?
for other
Ninguém espera
services.
mais na
What
fila.
happens? Nobody waits in the
Motivo
queue
pelo qual eu estou
anymore.
justificando o fato
And
dela
this
ter
is a
sido com esta
reason
golpe de
while
ineficiência,
I'm
está gerando uma
justifying that
oportunidade de retorno
strategy
do
of
investimento que essa
inefficiency
companhia
that
faz
is
em
generating the
capacidade.
opportunity
O
for
nível de
return
serviço de
when
tirar
it
os
comes
atrasos,
to capacity.
de fazer
That
com que o
service
Porto de Santos
level of
flua,
eliminating
flua, como
delays, that
costuma fazer em todo o
ensuring that
restante da
there is
rota,
a flow
inclusive o retorno para o
after
exterior.
the ship has berthed in the port of
Este
Santos. And this
reporte é
includes
importante para dizer o
uh,
seguinte:
containers going
vem a
abroad.
demanda.
So the port of Santos is very important because the
70% da
demand
utilização do
is
berço, eu
coming,
quero dar um outro sinal para os
70%
senhores
of
nesse
the
final de
use
semana.
of berthing. I would
Eu
like to
sequer
give you
estou
another
considerando
signal. I'm not
a
even
inauguração em
considering
dezembro,
the
em janeiro de 2022,
inauguration of
e a
December
extensão do berço que
2021,
nós temos
January
na saída de
2022,
1.2 para
of the
1.5 km por
extension
mês.
of the berthing, where we went from 1.2 to 1.5
Hoje,
in
a
terms
gente
of
consegue
the length
absorver
of the
sem
key.
ter a necessidade
Nowadays,
da
we
utilização
can absorb without having to
parcial ou
use
total desse novo berço. Nós fizemos
partially
um
or
roadshow
totally
na
this
China,
new birthing area. We held a
exposição do
show
material.
in
Eu
China,
colocava
and
mapa de
the
janela de berço
exhibition
completamente
of
free.
the material
Escolha o
was
dia,
a
a hora
berth
e o
that
volume
was
que o senhor quer chegar no
completely
Porto de
free.
Santos.
Choose the date, the time, and the
Só
volumes
que
you
isso
would like
acontece
to
dado
moor
aquilo que
the
nós
Port of
estamos fazendo
Santos.
de investimento.
And of course, this is thanks to the investments that we have made.
Corresponde o nosso retorno à price
Simply
making, não é
respect
Porto de
our
Santos,
return at the
mas a
Port of
nível nacional.
Santos.
And this is nationwide, of course. So we have a strategy, we have a discipline, and Carlos very clearly mentioned that this was thought of clearly in 2020 and that we have been executing since 2019 with results, even though this year has not been normal. So you see the level of demand of the market and the commercial demand. We're not sitting back waiting for demand to knock on our door. There is no zone of comfort to wait and understand if opportunities exist or not. We're creating opportunities, and when I say 72 hours, these are one-ups in all the terminals with that detail of the time in which the boat that has moored will be leaving and how this will be boarded. But he's going to wait in a queue. And the port of Santos nowadays has 76% of use and berthing, and demand can come in. We have sufficient room for this without, of course, considering the amount of investments we have for 2024. Now, in this slide, we will speak about container terminals. I'm not speaking only of Santos, although this is an extremely important asset as part of our benchmark. I would like to speak about the container terminal. We speak of Pará all the way down to Santa Catarina. Here you see the key volumes and the storage volumes year on year. Now, when we look at this, when we come here, it's not difficult to understand that we do not depend exclusively on volume. And what I would like to underscore here is that the commercial strategy, well, you have been following up on us since 2019. The change of methodology, putting this together with strategy, our execution capacity, the growth of the NPS score, all of this enables us through all of these variables to obviously deliver a higher EBITDA, because you have a reduction in the variable points. Daniel will refer to this. We do have the possibility of renegotiating, but it's not only about renegotiation and price that allows this to materialize. There is no pressure to sit at the table, and it is no lack of humility to say your utilization rate at the Port of Santos is 75%. We have a relationship with these clients for 25 years. It's a long story where we have shared so many things together. So an increase in EBITDA, a retraction of almost 40,000 containers, somewhat higher in 2023, and we still haven't seen the news for the fourth quarter. At the last call, we said that there was still a retraction, but everything is underway. We spoke about 77,000 containers in the first quarter, a huge retraction, 88,000 containers in the second quarter, and 99,000 containers in the third quarter. And in November, in our conference call, many asked, what happened in November? The year is finishing. Well, it's the same conversation we had in the call. So if we look at the evolution of the average ticket, I would like to emphasize that this is not box rate, it's the key operation, because of the respect that we have for our ship owner clients and the confidentiality of our negotiations. To remind you, this year we had 13 negotiations, and one of the assumptions of this foundation is that the net promoter score, when we changed the methodology in 2020, we used the domestic market methodology. We wanted to attain a level of excellence. In 2020, our figure was around 30, and our goal was 50. We reached 50 last year. And to become a reference in Net Promoter Score with detractors growing is a danger. You find yourself that is in a zone that is not a comfort zone. So what did we did? We used a publication of track.co. We looked at all of the companies in the sector, logistics in ports throughout the world, and there is a classification by area. It's interesting. We got to the benchmark, and when we looked at this publication, there's a zone called the zone of quality, and the net promoter score is from 51 to 75. And we went, wow, we're part of the main players in logistics, in port companies in Brazil and throughout the world. But we're going very quickly through the zone of quality. We're seeking the highest level of excellence. And once again, this will only materialize if all of these factors come together. Let's try to put in a conversation the birthing idleness. What is it that you will see? Try to converse about a contract, a 2-year contract, without showing a strategic plan of what will happen in the company to reach those 3 million. Of course, we could work with spots, but in Santos Brasil, we don't work with spot with anybody, even though we have some routes stored in our terminals. Of course, there's free will. If you think that you should go to the competitor and pay less, and many return, our churn level is very low. We're speaking about a churn level, considering this level of evolution of average ticket of less than 4%. Among that number of clients we're speaking about, another highlight that will help you in your simulation in 9 months of 2023, and this is not annualized, the result of the negotiations that we carried out. We had a very large contract in April, and I can say that the midpoint of this was in September, when we went through 2 important players during our negotiation. We're speaking of a single month, therefore. For 2024, therefore, the expectation is that we will see the results of this evolution of average tickets for the full 12 months. This is not represented in this slide. And when we speak about key operations, we do this on purpose. It should be read, keys, the part of exports, and of course the railroad component. We must make sure that all of these gears are working together to preserve the legitimacy of compliance of our agreements. I'm going to speak about the outlook for 2024 for the Port of Santos and the highlights of 2023, as we're very optimistic regarding some cases. Port of Santos, we have a record harvest of sugar, cotton, and coffee. Sugar, for example, as Brazilians, we have a partner in India, and they are global players. We're going to restrict exports to 11 million tons and preserve the rest to comply with their domestic demand. We're lagging behind a bit for the last 2 or 3 months. We have been working with sugar in containers and bags. All of our warehouses have sugar. The harvest is a record. India has not recovered for 2024. Quite the contrary. Our approach is to converse about 2024 and structures that could facilitate the logistics, including the vision of the traders here, that the value of the freight will not be what we have at present. This would aid and abet us, and we will ensure that we have a growth vis-a-vis what we had last year. Here you see the variation. When we speak about construction, although this helps the scenario of inflation, what is important is the resumption of the inventory level. I don't know if I can say that this was the segment that was more hampered, but it's among the top three in Brazil. The chemical industry. And what I would like to say about this in our conversations with multinationals, clients that have been with us for more than a decade, that the retraction of imports in the pharmaceutical industry reached -40 in the 9 months of the year and used up all of the inventories that existed in Brazil. So the trend of our clients towards us, of course, is to have a resumption of replenishment of their inventory, because, of course, this will help our business. We have 30% market share in everything that is loaded in the Port of Santos, regardless of this being take-on or not. We have a warehouse in Campos for logistics where 50% is automotive, 50% is for chemicals. So this is of importance for us. And when it comes to the chemical industry, the hygiene and cleaning segment, we point to the fact that in 2024, we will have a positive inflation or positive growth. There are two segments that did not come to a standstill in 2023, machinery and electronics. Month after month, they had a lower drop of imports in 2023. And cabotage, of course, 10% of increase, not only for Tecon Santos, it also happened at Vila do Santos. And what is special here is this movement of consumer goods and capital goods that were given thrust to. What happened in Manaus, the drought has caused this cabotage volume to pick up for Santos as well as for Manaus. And of course, with a very positive trend because of the entrance of a new player, as I just explained to you. Now, if we speak about Vila do Conde, here are the highlights for 2023, and they're interesting in terms of showing you some of the signs we observe. Which are the signs that you can see in this slide? First, the flexibility of the analysis carried out by Santos Brasil. Well, we were faced with several problems at Tecon Vila do Conde. What we did was to carry out a market analysis, an in-depth analysis. As we already have the general cargo terminal there, we tried to see what was happening in the north. It's all of that story of agribusiness that migrated to the north. What else was there? The region is going through a new cycle of implementation of projects, something gigantic for mining, steel, agriculture, and energy in the first quarter. If we consider the volume of we had with a great deal of data, with business intelligence pricing, and we said, Carlos Sepúlveda, we have a proposal for you. We have a PCG, that is, we carry out imports for trucks and equipment for the mining company. These are very bold projects. They're not spot projects, they are long-term projects. And the proposal is that, considering that the occupancy of the Vila do Conde was 60% and we had idle yard, we have already decided to use the cargo of the project. We visited each of these projects in Belém, Marabá, and you name it, we visited it. And we signed a commitment. We doubled the area from 7.5 to 15,000 square meters, and this is the result of our representativeness for 2023 and 2024, of course, with a growth. This has not impacted anything at all at the Vila do Conde terminal. We continue with 120,000 containers that are being maintained. And our focus, of course, is our main client. The capex is of billions to support us as a port operator and a logistic operator for trucks at Santos Brasil, so that this opportunity, which has been given in 2024 with projects that have been agreed upon. These are not dreams. These are not PowerPoints. This capex is happening at this point in time in Pará. Of course, Antonio Carlos looked at the P&L of our proposal, the entire issue of profitability that cannot be compared to containers. But because of the area, because of the quality of the clients involved and the projects that had been highly detailed, we took the decision and we will be beginning in April. Now, what you see here is the result of only 9 months. So this is a narrative that is worthwhile explaining to you. A port operator can have as a core the containers. This is what our CEO just mentioned, the liquid bulk terminal. The motivation, look at the capex. Who says that a liquid bulk container can't work with other cargoes? We have that project cargo. We have the project for bagged goods. Now, going to use in the best way possible all of the opportunities we have identified to materialize these opportunities. Another point about Vila do Conde that merits your attention when you follow up on this. Of course, through the media, all of you have seen the drought in the Amazon region and how difficult it is for the cargo to enter or leave Manaus at present. The Vila do Conde terminal has become a logistic option for the northern area that formerly only had cabotage and long haul. There's now a new transshipment product, storage, sending and receiving finished product since the end of September with a contract that has been signed for 4 months. 3,500 additional containers compared to the demand we already have at Vila do Conde. 3,500 containers. We went from 9,000 to 12,000. So you can see the importance in safeguarding Manaus to include that 33% of additional demand at our terminal with a high level of utilization. We haven't done more for lack of physical space. This is a smaller terminal, 13,000 in October, the same number now in November, and in December we will still have a leap. Now, why do I say leap?
The volume of Amazonas River has gone up 21 centimeters. It needs another 15 centimeters so that ships can travel there with the desired capacity and not underloaded. And then Santos Brasil, is the opportunity over? No, no way. This has encouraged a strategic study. Of course, we involve Sepúlveda because there's institutional and regulation issues involved to prepare us for 2 things. So, do you have any doubt whether there will be a next draft? Do you know that El Niño will be severe until March 2024? So, what do we need to do as a company so that the 3,500 containers can more area to keep the exact same conditions on the terminal. For example, we are considering taking out, considering the volumes of finished products. So we are going to start a study with the dockers company, not to fit in a barge between long haul and cabotage, so that we have a lineup of barges. So these are strategies that a long time we will be able to say what Santos Brasil can do, and a bigger force like this will be better prepared for higher volumes and to make the most of our asset. And if it weren't enough to give the support to Manaus, a Republican support, really, I mean it, just overnight. All authorities called, Sepúlveda, Daniel, you need to help us. Yes, of course. So the CEO of Samsung, many customers who weren't really our customers because they were manufacturing in Manaus. I want part of your terminal for storage. I can help you on the carousel, in and out, because it's not small. We're not selling out customs area for customers. Not to mention the draft in Manaus, the things that happened were so interesting. We started to understand how it worked, how the barges were working. And so I cannot yet say the product or any customer. Mention names, say names of the products and customers. But I can tell you that by February next year, Santos Brasil will open a new product for the North region. We are going to receive long-haul containers, unload in our terminal, transship to the barges, and then deliver at the customer's home inputs in terms of metal coming from China, for example. So now this is a time of extreme difficulty. We support transshipment, and this is already generating a type of cargo that didn't exist, a type of product that we didn't work with, and in which the ferries and barges that we work together with Santos Brasil, we have created a product that is in a last phase of approval. And you'll be seeing this so soon as we can talk in terms of ESG, less handling, environmental. I have to admit that I'm very excited about this product. It's like I'm a child. I've been working on for quite a while, and we're almost there. Now, a little bit about logistics. Antonio Carlos talked about logistics and what we are investing in. And here I have the following to say to you. Once again, we are talking about the commercial and pricing strategy in which this yellow here is dwell time. So look at that. Once the bottleneck is right, so dwell time used to be 16 days, has gone down to 13. So slow down, volume. So at the same time, we have, as the dwell time dropped, all our analysis and entire process, that the strategy that we started way back in 2019 has driven the average ticket of this kind of warehousing to go down year after year. So the year-to-date EBITDA for the first 9 months, considering a retraction of 20%, so there's no magic. This is data analysis to make a decision. And this is studying something that in commerce that we say is lifetime value. How long does a customer spend for the first period? Do pay for the minimum or SIF? And so this makes it possible for us
to redesign the way we integrate with the market. We have a perception where the tariffs for the bonded warehouse, is it we're going to pay 1,000, 1 million, as there is a funnel or a bottleneck with all this information, all this customer segmentation. We have created campaigns, we brought together a commercial team, and this is the segment we are going to work in this quarter. These are the priorities, these are the amounts, and this is the new pricing methodology, both in the public tables as well as in our own assets. This is what we are talking about and confirming, which is not new for you, and it has been going on year after year. We would like to emphasize one thing. Logistics is not primary zone. Just as TCOM, all our port competitors, in terms of port operators, once they saw the volume dropping in Q1, what would anyone do? So they retain the cargo in-house. So the challenge for secondary zones and logistics is bigger than the port, because we only get cargoes for the bonded warehousing from ports, and the ports only will let it out if there is demand. So I'm only emphasizing this so that we can give the right importance and relevance and intensity to these 3 bullets here, so that we know the level of prediction, sales bottleneck, or we have a surgical precision in terms of details. NPS is 59. NPS, just for reference, it's not from 0 to 100. 0 to 100, this would not be so good. To minus 100 to 100. We hardly ever see a negative NPS. So, NPS, Customer Satisfaction Survey, is from minus 100 to 100 positive. So the challenge was this, we kept the strategy, one more database, more BI, and especially our employees are very much aligned with the strategy, disciplined in execution. We never miss any forums, so that in 9 months we could have this increase despite the volumes that you can see here. And then liquid terminals. And Antonio Carlos said, well, we are very motivated. When we were successful in B3, so in terms of liquids, we should say a few things here. Number one, when Santos Brasil started working with liquid bulks, you made many comments. Have you lost the focus? Are you on an adventure? What happened to you? What we want and what we sell in liquids is that we do not want to be a player that is positioned in all markets without preserving this. Our excellent NPS. It's not just a quality zone. We want to bring Santos Brasil culture, that what we promise, what we deliver. Well, we only have a few customers, the area is small. That's okay. Next year, there will be more. There will be an expansion. So the market share here of 14% is made up exclusively by spot contracts. So spot contracts, they're really a challenge. There's no collateral, no assurance that the volume is going to happen, that the cargo is going to come. So we never miss an opportunity. And this is what happened until October. There is a seasonality in the end of the year, but we have a 14% market share that we won. This is the evolution of EBITDA and margin. And you're going to ask us, so you're going to from 52 to 37. Well, actually, In the second half, when we pay the grant, there is a credit favoring us in terms of taxing. So the margin in the second half is bigger than it effectively happened this quarter, and you will understand why. We had operations without accidents, many customers, spot change of products, without any contamination or product losses since the beginning. Our NPS, which is the target for the whole company. So liquid bulks, they were the leaders. They started before and first, and Santos Brasil should have the service level that would be unparalleled to make a difference in our industry. And two very important points for 2024, with a few indications here. So customs license expected for the second half of 2024 will make it possible for us to store imports. So we receive the ship, pump it straight to the customer to then have additional revenue from storage, from warehousing of the products that we receive. And also we are going to expand the brownfield terminals, brownfield by the end of 2024, adding capacity for us to work in an easier way. Now I would like to give the floor to Danielle. Thank you so much for listening to me. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here in person, and also those of you who are watching us on digital platforms. Well, my presentation is to share a few numbers with you, to add to what Antonio Carlos and Ricardo Botteri have already said in terms of strategies, general strategy of the company, commercial strategy of the company that Ricardo got in details, and a little bit of our vision of the use and positioning of the company in the capitals market. As you can see here, we talked a lot about 2018 and the cycle that started in 2018, a strategy that we laid out in 2018 and its execution ever since. Why do we say that? Because in 2018, we started making the investments in Tecon Santos, in Vila do Conde, back then, in a scenario that was very much unbalanced in terms of supply and demand, with brutal compression of prices. But then the company got together, company's management said, well, this market will undergo a few changes. And then we started understanding and seeing the signs. So let's be before, in advance of the projected curves, so that we can offer the capacity to have supply and maybe have a capacity of once again becoming price formers in the markets where we operate. As we are working with infrastructure, we need to take a head start, to be slightly before, so that we cannot execute the necessary investments on demand. We need to position ourselves a little bit earlier to be to anticipate what's coming up. So this is the strategy that the company has been reporting to you. We've been talking about this with many of you. We know all of you must hear this story this narrative that we've been sharing with you. I get it wrong for 1 year. So there was a pandemic in 2020. Well, we couldn't have expected that. But the net revenue Look at the leap between 2020 and 2021. And why is it so? Because 2020, we had made investments, and we had the possibility of starting to renegotiate contracts with the best supply and demand balance in our main assets, which is the Port of Santos. This is the main thing about revenue. And this continued in 2023. And Ricardo said this, we have renegotiated just in key activities, 13 contracts with all our customers. And once again, we are going to see another step being taken in the future. But the reflex of this is much better when we look at the company's operating cash generation, and in our case, is measured by the EBITDA. The margin leaps. So in the first 9 months of 2023, our company has 41.7. Here, if we look at Q3, we are talking about 48%. This is the level we'll be working on in the future. And from then upwards, these are consolidated numbers. And we have different businesses when we look at consolidated numbers. If we look at port terminals operations, just that, we are talking about margins reaching in Q3 57%. Tecon Santos, this has exceeded 60%. And this is what we always say, a good container terminal that is very well operated with well-balanced prices, it will have more than 60% considering the market. And this market, the Port of Santos, offers like no one else, because this is the gateway of Brazil. It has transshipment, it has cabotage, it has long haul, exports and imports. Imports are very important for our business, considering the number of services that we can offer to the cargo, not just to the ship owner, but also to the cargo. The approach of Santos Brasil, right from the beginning, right from 1997, was to have a very differentiated attention to cargo. It's a different way to operate terminals, to have integrated or verticalized terminals that serve much more to their navigation lines. We have a different strategy. 45%, give or take, of our net revenue comes from warehousing or logistics services. Same thing applies to liquid bulk. So we have 26% net margin in Q3. And I believe that both here and there, or any other financial indicator that you may take, will be driven. And why is it so? It's not just because we need more price. It's not about that. This company is highly leveraged in terms of operations, and it is strictly well-sized. We expected to operate a volume. We sized the company for a volume that didn't come because it shrunk in the first 9 months in the Port of Santos, not just in the Port of Santos, it dropped 12% in consolidated numbers, and imports dropped 18%, something like that. This is the volume that we lost year on year in terms of warehousing.
Now, the result could have been much higher, and I can say that Tecon Santos, if we maintain the volumes of 2022 and the cargo mix of 2022, would have delivered an additional 200 million in EBITDA at the prices nowadays. Now, this is the figure, the strength of the Santos Brasil portfolio, and especially of Tecon Santos. I'm not concerned about volume. I know that in the company, we face the fluctuations every day. We have an app that we look at every day. We're addicted to that, but we're not concerned with volumes when we invest in Santos Brasil. Personally, I have not observed, and we have not observed any structural event or fundamental event that will say that the containers in Brazil are slowing down. As we do not see this, we have seen the volumes. In 2024, the volumes have recuperated. We're ending a gap of 6% in the company. The company will end that gap and perhaps more. So we're going from 18% in the first quarter to 13%. This is normalization, and we do expect growth in 2024. Won't be concerned if this growth does not appear in the first Q. We wanted to realign the company regarding its top line, have balanced prices, and to work so that operationally the company would have the right size for the volumes that are coming in without increasing fixed costs. When the volume that has been projected here for 2024, 25, and of course, this justifies the investment mentioned by Carlos at the beginning. Therefore, the company is, and well, I tend to joke, the company is doomed to growing. It will grow because the work that had to be carried out, we have been doing gradually and executing through time. I spoke about the top line, and there's another process underway in the company. The only variable that we do not control in our business is the organic growth of volume, because that, of course, depends on macro conditions mostly, and sometimes is due to some domestic issues. Of course, that inorganic growth is easier. We could fight for new services and much more. We do not do this by putting aside profitability. We do not do that. We don't need to do that. So we're okay losing a few things at present because we're not focused on the quarter or on the year of 2023. Our vision is for the long term. And if you look at Tecon Santos, this is an asset that extends to 2047. There's an additional point. Ricardo conveyed this, the number of extra calls that this asset can operate. It doesn't have to give up price to fill up the terminal, because year after year, we have observed the need for Tecon Santos to work as a buffer and to operate 70,000 containers of imports that are coming from those extra calls. Now, what is within our hands? The cost, of course. We're going to continue to obtain the greatest value from the company's operational leverage. What did we do this year? And it's not for the sake of cost. I reiterate this, the zero-based budget, cut everything out. Well, that gives me the chills, quite frankly. We haven't done that at the company. We want to be a benchmark in terms of efficiency of cost and expense management. This company has 1 billion. Part of this is not manageable because it's the payment of assets that are not under our ownership. But we have a package that represents 600 million reais. Here we include traveling, consultancy, benefits, a variety of things. We worked with a methodology that I will not detail. What I'm trying to say is that with all of this done, it is our understanding that this year we could be 40, 50 million more efficient in terms of cost. It's given, it's a given. We're going to head towards 2024 with 40, 50 million reais lighter in terms of cost. And of course, this has its annualized base. Now, there is the opportunity here, the opportunity to invest in this very well. Now, if Santos Brasil enters 2024 exactly as it is now, without any additional project, we still are 40, 50 million lighter in terms of cost and expense efficiency. And this is a long-standing work, not for 2023. It will go on to 2025, and it has been put in place. So we assess these deviations, the cost of these factors. We hold meetings every month. We go back to the drawing board, and this has been put in place. There's an area called budget and performance where we analyze data. We don't want to hear explanations from the managers. We look at the data, first of all, to understand where the deviations are, and we redress them. So the cost is in our hands, and this entire investment strategy is within our hands. The commercial strategy is at hand. What is not at hand is the organic growth of volume, as that depends on external variables. As I do not foresee any disruption, we're not going to change because of the volumes of November, December, January. There will be no changes, and there will be no replacement for the Port of Santos while we invest in Santos Brasil. Let's speak very quickly about our capital structure and our financial leverage. Well, everything has changed, perhaps slowly, but we have already changed our stance when it comes to net indebtedness. Since the follow-on that took place in September of 2020, we have been positive in net cash, and we have carried this cash during a 3-year period. Well, 2 years. And there was an issue there. We had the opportunity because of the infrastructure auctions, opportunities of 2%. We said there will be an opportunity here. We acquired 3 liquid bulk terminals. We were not able to project returns as we wished, and I think that was very quickly mentioned at the beginning. And because of that, we did the following. And of course, the scenario for interest rate changed. It went from 3% to 12, 13%. The opportunities changed, our mindset changed. We're going to use that cash to pay back shareholders, shareholders' equity and dividends. And despite all of this, we did not stop making investments of 1 billion reais, as you have observed. And what is marvelous, we still have room in the balance. If a good opportunity arises with the right profitability, we can further leverage our balance and carry out an inorganic growth strategy. And with a very healthy indebtedness, the indebtedness is in reais. We do not run the risk of foreign exchange, of course. And in the long term, for Itaqui, we were able to finance 80% of the capex with the Bank of the Northeast, BNP, to 3% for a 17-year period. Therefore, the company does have access to the capital market. We do have access to banks. We also have access to subsidized financing. And of course, the Treasury will understand that these social subsidies are important and they will lend to us. So Santos Brasil is in a very healthy condition to finance its growth and to pay out the capital invested for its shareholders. Now, nowadays, this is our mindset when we speak about capital allocation to invest our assets. Not to go into details, this has already been done. Antonio Carlos gave you that explanation. And in the expansion of Tecon Santos, of Vila do Conde, and in the expansion of the liquid bulk terminals located in Itaqui. And alongside this, to continue on that path of maximizing value generation for shareholders through the allocation of proceeds. Of course, other instruments may arise. A buyback, we do have a share buyback program that is open on reduction of capital that could happen if we have more liquidity than what we can pay out. So there are these instruments at our disposal, but we continue firmly ahead with the payout that is of approximately 95%. Here it was 135% because we used our profit reserve and we reduced it to zero. This year, we have already paid 265 million in dividends and 31 cents per share. Last year, it was 67 cents per share, and I believe that this will continue to grow going forward. To conclude, I would like to refer to the company performance in general. Since 2018, when we began to put in place this strategy that we have mentioned often today, the company was able to perform very well in Evolve, which is not our best benchmark, but also in the small cap index. Now the company liquidity has increased considerably. We went from 5 million, presently we are at 40 and some million for the average daily traded volume, to a small cap for Santos Brasil. This is good. It allows for the entry of several funds that formerly found a restriction in terms of liquidity, especially abroad. The foreign investors were not acting. We had an increase of 10% in the shareholder base for foreign investors. Presently, we have 26% of funds that have headquarters abroad, especially in Europe, North America, Canada, and the United States. And we have seen this on the rise, the interest of foreigners increasing for Santos Brasil because of the excellent work carried out by the investor relations group. And you can see how aligned we are and growingly aligned with our partners and investors. We have almost 1% in terms of call managers. And when I say that, honestly, I'm not concerned with volumes. I know the company will continue to grow. I'm saying this because it's my equity, my pocket. And I think everybody can speak based on their own equity, what they will earn from this. And an additional point, we have a shareholder that has 41% of this capital, not a trader. This does not offer liquidity. Despite this, the growth is considerable in terms of the company's liquidity. Very well, these are my remarks. I think I used up my time, and we can make better use of the time in an informal question and answer session. This is how we normally do things here. And very well, we will now open the floor for Q&A. Juliana, if you would like to act as master of ceremonies and open the floor for questions and answers, please. Once again, should you wish to pose a question, please raise your hand. And of course, we have the three executives here to answer your questions. Good morning, Guilherme Mendes from JP Morgan. Thank you for taking my question. Can I continue with a question? Yes. A question on your capacity. You spoke about anticipating that investment dynamic, and if we could conciliate this with the STS-10. Now, given this anticipation of capacity, this need for volume for the present day terminal, if the STS is finished, or what this area could become, or if it could become a risk in terms of the investments you're doing at present. Our anticipation results from the new stance of the Port Authority. The former project of STS-10 was linked to privatizing the Port Authority of the Port of Santos. And in terms of strategic decisions, the Port of Santos will no longer be privatized, and capacity is being sought out through the present-day partners of the port. There is a project to expand the cruising terminal. It will be displaced in the following way. It will be displaced to the area of STS-10, where we had the port or the cruise port. We will now have a fertilizers port that is very close to the railroad near the beach. There will be a general cargo terminal by extending the contract of Ecovias, and in the remaining area, we will possibly add this to BTP. Now, at Santos Brasil, we do believe this makes much more sense. First of all, there's a difficult problem in access to that area. If you have any curiosity, if you get in your car and drive to the Port of Santos, you will observe how difficult it is to get to the port. And for a project of that size without infrastructure, you will simply block the access to the port. So they're thinking of creating a new container terminal, continental of Santos in the Santa Rita area, close to the stewardship. But this will demand much more time than the ST-10. It's a 10-year project as a minimum, but this is a project that will not create problems for the local infrastructure of Santos, Cubatão, or Guarujá. We think it would be sustainable.
And that's why existing terminals have the commitment of supplying the needs in future years. Santos Brasil alone can handle the Port of Santos. Santos has 5 million TEUs, so we are going from 32 to 3. So we're really confident with this anticipation of investment. We update this curve every month, and our vision is that with this investment anticipation, we can always be 200 and 300,000 TEUs of capacity in hands. Because Brazil, there's no constant growth in Brazil. So this is all very much related to commodity prices in Brazil. And there are new cargoes Today, there's cotton being shipped out in containers at huge volumes, all this going out through the port of Santos with huge competitiveness of Brazilian animal protein growing year after year too. And this year, and I don't know if you've noticed in our presentation, there has been a major drop in imports. Our imports, I'm talking about 2018. This scenario is not going to stay like that. And there's still a potential of increasing transshipment in Santos because of the dredging. So everything is very favorable. This makes us confident in terms of making the investments in advance. And I don't know if you've noticed, we delayed this curve a little bit. So we should be 2.6 million TEUs next year. We push that to 2025, so we're not 400 or 500,000 TEUs in idle capacity. So if there is a major fiscal problem in Brazil that will prevent growth, that will require the maintenance of high interest rates for a longer time, we can hold that. We can drag that up to 2031, and we are not going to invest 600 million next year. But the vision that we have today, with all information, the data, and the conversations with ship owners, it's absolutely necessary to do it in advance so that we have this buffer of 200,000. Why 200,000? Because then we can get an entire shipping line from Asia, Europe, a large number, 200,000 TEUs. And we want to have that capacity in hands because with service level and price levels that we have, and the generation of wealth is really fabulous. It's amazing. So we should see this idle capacity as something good, not bad. Because idle, we think that the resources are being misused or underused. Ricardo has shown a chart, and if you pay attention at distribution of demand, is not regular or linear. We'll see what just happened in the first half of the year and what happened in the third quarter. So this buffer, which is the idleness that Antonio Carlos is mentioning, is what makes it possible for us to operate these extra boxes and have no queue or no line at all in the port of Santos, because it has peaks. It's not linear. That's why there are peaks. That's why utilization and waiting time in competitors goes from 9 hours in the Q1 to 29 hours in Q3. So we are always regulating these 200, 300,000 extra capacity. It's not just to sit there and wait. It's so that when there is a peak, the seasonal peaks, we're capable of operating loads of very, very high value added. So extra calls with lots of imports, without mentioning the capacity that Ricardo mentioned, any of our customers to have a berthing window for a new service that they want to add and take to the port of Santos. So idleness in our case has a strategic component that in many industries are not like that. So usually idle capacity is waste of capital, wasting production capacity, and that doesn't apply to us.
Bom dia, Lucas Barbosa do Santander.
Good morning, I'm Lucas Barbosa from Santander. Thank you for the presentation. Everything great. Two questions. Number one, waiting times, which is one of the problems in the port as a whole. How do you see the competition? Do you see them making any investments to reduce waiting times in their terminals? This is question number one. And is the area that we call Prainha, how is it evolving? There is a plot of land there called Prainha or Little Beach. Well, the area that is called Prainha or Little Beach, there is a community, and we want to take out the community, the people who are living there. We need to look at it in the long term. It doesn't really make sense to build a new terminal with 80 hectares just next door. This is state vision, because in 2047, one day, the Santos Brasil is going to walk out from the project and someone else will go in. This is part of Brazilian foreign trade. We are just there for some time. And in the world, we compete with large terminals. And large terminals are much more efficient for those who use the terminal, because it makes possible for you to have a hub for many different routes. There is transshipment, you use external areas, open air areas. This has a huge carbon generation impact. But we've been following up. This possibility exists, but it's a long way. There are many approvals, the courts need to agree, there are many legal requirements in terms of the contract for which there has been a bid. There's something about it that there is no access because it's surrounded by a railway, and the people who are living there are between the railway and the sea. But from the railway to the next access, there are people living. But there is just, the access is very limited. And then the project is no longer 13 million TEUs, but it's 4 million TEUs. And the need is to go beyond 2034, 35. So even if we don't do this in the short term, we believe and we think this should be at some point in time be attached to TCOM. It's useless to have many terminals of 100,000, 200,000. So the ships today use berthing areas of 400 meters. It's a major scales. Well, you can accommodate a ship, but then there is another area, another gate. So it's used for something else other than attaching the existing project would be extremely inefficient. I'm going to talk about waiting times. There's always some waiting times for the ship to go in, because the Port of Santos has a problem with tides. The ships today are very big, so they need to wait for the tides to be full, and then they need to wait for 6 hours until the tide is full for them to go in. So those 9 hours, we don't consider it as a line, a waiting line. It's for the convenience of the ship owner. So BTP can do the same thing as us, but these are projects that are necessary for the port that will take a while until they come true. This is not part of we are not seeing this as a risk. We think this is necessary, this is part of the port, and our customer portfolio, we are protected from that. And so the history of customers, we have 20 customers that have been our customers for 20 years. I'm going to give it over to Ricardo, who's going to complement. Thank you very much, Sepúlveda and Lucas. Your questions are always very good. I would like to say the following. We monitor absolutely every single movement in the Port of Santos. We know exactly whether there is something that has been bought and that there is being expected. So we have no illusion of where the market is going towards, how the competition is positioning in terms of competitiveness. So my straight answer to you, there is no short-term investment that would make any difference. I agree with Antonio Carlos. 9 hours that's not a waiting line. So it's the time that you go, come back, and then the whole port and this waiting times are absolutely reasonable. The possible change that we see that Este, Santos, they will take out the administrative building for empty containers. So they change a little bit the layout. Not as much as there would be investments that could pose a risk or an evolution in waiting times. This is all under control. There is no reason for any ship owner to wait in line when Santos Brasil has the berthing capacity that we have. This is the reason. This is not going to be additional cost for the ship owner or Brazil cost that we take out from imports. So I would dare say that with the 200,000 additional TEUs of buffer, we are ready to cater to extra calls because one has 84, 90%, and we are fully available for new services between 80 and 100,000 boxes, which is something that ship owners negotiate with us in the port of Santos. Good morning, everyone. I am Pedro from XP. Thank you for taking my question. I would like to go back to CapEx. I think you've been reporting in your conference calls this anticipation, especially focusing on Santos Tecom. So what I would like to explore is the distribution or the breakdown of the CapEx looking into the future, because you're going to continue to expand capacity. And I think a year ago in your other investor day, you had an even smaller number for 2024. And this leads to a significant reduction that was evolved more linearly until 2030, 2031. I would like to see whether this linearity will continue in the future. You said the continuation of payout. Are we speaking about the same levels for 2023? And whether this anticipation will in some way change your strategy if we look into 2024 onwards? Well, I'm first going to talk about the CapEx. So this anticipation, that amount, that increase for next year is basically anticipation of purchases plus 8 yard equipment, the RTGs that are used for handling. We would have 16 of 40 electrical 16 electrical equipment, pieces of equipment out of 40. And we would be paying half of the price of these pieces of equipment that will be delivered at the end of 2024. So this anticipation is to assure the capacity of 25, 26. And now linearity, no, it's not linear. So the following years will have a lower capex for Tecon Santos. What would this number comprehend? And this would be the demolition of 2 administrative buildings, the building of a new administrative building, new yards, and the pieces of equipment. From then on, what we have is the change of equipment. We would not need to change. What we have is for 2031, which is the deadline for these investments according to our contract. So after that year, we are going to have a drop. Now, a ship owner might say, I want to bring another 300,000 transshipment TEUs and another 100,000 gateway cargoes for you. Well, we are going to advance the investment. So any increase in capex will be necessarily associated to volume, and a volume at a very good phase, a volume where there is no oversupply in the port. So I will start talking about dividend. But our commitment with the payout of dividends is very strong, as Daniel said, and as I said, there will be no reduction because the company has no debt. We can even take out debt to continue paying out the dividends. So Daniel is going to complement. He's going to give you the more precise numbers of leverage that we can do to do that. So since you started on dividends, let me just make a short comment in answering to Pedro's question. And on the presentation you referred to, the capacities as 2.6 million TEUs. So here, the scenario, the capacity is getting to 3 million TEUs. And this is very much the result of two things: better projection of demand after 1 year, and a better scenario that we understand is more pertinent in terms of supply and demand, or to capacity offer. So if we were estimating 2 million TEUs for that investment, and therefore there is a bigger drop in the execution of CapEx, so there is a decay and CapEx is compressed. Here, in contrast, our capacity projection is that, yes, we do want to get to 3 million TEUs because the supply and demand balance will be healthier by the end of the decade. So it was just this little aside. And in terms of dividends, yes, our intention is to continue paying dividends. So we do not have an installed policy that obliges us to pay out 95% of our net income. This will be done considering our cash. But as Antonio Carlos said, we still have major room to finance CapEx other than with cash generation. It makes sense considering the company's current capital structure, but always keeping the discipline of not over leveraging the company. And I always say that we see the terminal operation business different from other infrastructure because here we have free prices. We can freely negotiate with the parties. There's no tariff, no cap, no contracted and mandatory adjustments, and therefore we need to have a more strict discipline in terms of leverage levels. But considering the growth scenario in terms of cash generation, considering the deleveraging, yes, I agree. I think that the payout may continue very, very high without jeopardizing the execution of the CapEx or the financial health of the company. Can you hear me? This is Andre Ferreira from Bradesco BBI. Could you explain future margins getting to 55 to 57%, more or less? What are the main drivers underlying it? And price negotiations above the inflation in the future, or does it come from other drivers? Costs, something that you said. Thank you so much.
An important thing is the Itaqui terminal that will be fully operational at the end of 2026. Its contribution at present is minimum. It has a cost, it's operating, and the EBITDA margin at present is around 30 or 40%, much below the 70 or 75% that we would like to attain. The second point, Tecon Santos, we have been speaking about this, and the investments are for marginal capacity increases. The foundation is there, and the operational leverage is very, very large. We can foresee that in the next 3 years, Yes, it will come very close to 2.4 million TEUs, and the amount of EBITDA generated will be significant. For each container, the invoicing of the container, 70% goes automatically to the EBITDA. So Tecon Santos will push the company's EBITDA upward. What we have as part of our horizon is the balance of the contract of Tecon Vila do Conde and Imbituba. At present, we don't pay for the lease because of the rebalancing that is underway. We're negotiating this, and during this period, we would like to rebalance the contract and reduce the losses that are given by Imbituba. Presently, this is not significant because of the company's size, but of course, this will aid and abet our EBITDA margin. The two main points are the operating leverage of Tecon and Itaqui coming into full operation. Both of these will take our absolute EBITDA to a completely different level with a small change in the company cost. Well, I'm like that person with disclaimers, 50, 60%. Please recall that they refer to container terminal units. Why? Because it's very difficult to reach a 60% margin. We have a logistics business that will not overcome 30% because it's the nature of the business. And this, when we speak about capital investments, the return on capital investment will come with a different magnitude. But we keep this in mind because the portfolio is made up of different animals. It's not consolidated and it has reached 50%. Now 60%, I have no doubt that the container unit can reach that, and Tecon Santos can go way beyond that. This is a hypothetical scenario. If you replicate the average ticket of Tecon Santos presently using the data of 22 for mix and cargo, we would have an additional 200 million of EBITDA. This is that brute force that comes from the operational leverage of Tecon Santos. Simply a parallel comment in terms of negotiations. We spoke about all of the variables that are part of the margin, and Daniel also referred to this. Now you ask, is there a gain in negotiations? All of the negotiations of this year were signed until 2025 with prefixed prices, including inflation in 2024 and 25. When we think about keys and ship owners, this already has been fully set forth. I showed you a slide here where the increase of the average ticket for the operation of the keys was around 20%, not annualized once again. We based ourselves on that figure in September. If we annualize it for 12 months, obviously this will fully support our dissertation in terms of contribution margin. Now, when it comes to logistics, differently from the key, all of the contracts are annualized. We showed you a slide with a drop, with the average ticket being increased because of our segmentation strategy. This will not come to a standstill. We have to continue to maintain the service levels we offer, enhancing them constantly. But when it comes to contracts for bonded warehouses, all of these are annualized and they will continue to be negotiated year after year by all of the parties. Hello, This is Marcelo Araz from BTG. I would like to speak about the contract renegotiation. We're discussing if you have additional contracts that will be renewed in the short, middle, and long term. And if you could speak about the competitiveness of box rate in the Port of Santos, if you could please refer to those topics. Well, speaking about the renegotiation of contracts for the short term, in terms of keys and ship owners, they have all been concluded. Tecon Santos, Vila do Conde, and Imbituba. For the next 2 years, the contractual terms have been predefined, and you will have greater visibility based on the date of renewal of the contract. You will know about the increments we're speaking about. There is no short-term negotiation for the existing contract. Nevertheless, the number of new ships that have been acquired with larger capacity will also be destined to South America and Brazil. And what I can say is that, yes, there are ongoing negotiations for the 3 terminals, but I will focus on Tecon Santos for services, for the new capacity of ships that are now on this route, Europe and Asia. And we have the opportunity with everything that has been mentioned here of our additional capacity of having a new contract. The ships will be delivered in the first quarter of 2024, but negotiations are underway. Negotiations of new contracts as well, aside from the cabotage where everything has been agreed upon. Because this is a new demand that we will face. You spoke about keys. Oh, the box rate. Well, the box rate is a touchy issue. The reference that you have of box rate refers to the public tariffs. They're public, they have all been approved by ANTAC, and you have an idea of the amount of box rate and the values for bonded warehousing. In the public tariff, there's a certain alignment. If you look at the comparison of the 3, there are no great distortions. Now, in negotiations of box rate with ship owners, we have a agreement of confidentiality. That's why we speak about average ticket, we speak about railroads for exports, and much more. We have the commitment of maintaining that and present to you the impact on EBITDA growth. First of all, to preserve confidentiality. And there are factors such as the cargo mix. I can speak about container shape, transshipment, empty containers. Now, the cargo mix in the market can change, whether favorably or not, change the box rate that is already prefixed, predefined. Simply to add to what Ricardo has said, we have moved forward in terms of the nominal increase of box rates, and as you advance, you're left without space. We don't want to go out into the international market, but there are other paths to work with the total invoicing per box. You can change the mix and you can work with new products. In your product portfolio, you can offer the cargo. So you're offering more services for the same container, and you will work with containers that have a higher added value. Now, this is the path that we're following in terms of logistics very clearly. We lost market share in logistics, but EBITDA this year will be better than last year because of an improvement in mix, an increase in number of products offered for the same container. Now, this second part is what we're going to tend to follow. And What drives the generation of EBITDA is a volume increase. That's why we're investing in capacity.
Tinha chat, não? Sei lá, depois dá uma olhada.
Well, if there are no further questions, I would like to thank all of you for your presence. It's always a pleasure to be here to speak about Santos Brasil. Our IR is at your entire disposal here at the office in Itaim, and whenever you wish, we can take you to our Santos terminal. This is a work that is under eternal changes. We do invite you to visit us. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you again.